Last year, I sold 100% of my Klabin shares and exchanged everything for Banco do Brasil. Many people asked me if it made sense to exchange a company in the pulp and paper sector like Klabin, a century-old, solid, dollarized company that owns thousands of hectares of forest for a state-owned bank. So, in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly what happened months after this exchange. Was it worth it? Was I able to improve my results? Were the dividends during this period higher or lower? Or would it have been better to keep Klabin in my portfolio? And for those of you who are just joining the channel, I'm Mel, an investment lawyer, and here we talk about investments and personal finances. I ask that you like it, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell. That same old story. It makes all the difference. It contributes to our growth, because every time you like, comment or interact here, YouTube understands that this video is interesting, that the content is relevant and ends up sending it to a larger number of people. So, if you can support this channel, tell me here in the comments if you have already made any changes in your portfolio and if it worked out. And before I tell you if this change from Klabin to Banco do Brasil was worth it, let me explain why I decided to sell Klabin shares. I have always advocated holding good companies, and I am a follower of the buy and hold theory. I always choose long-lasting, solid companies that pay dividends and generate value over time. And Klabin is the type of company that fits this profile perfectly. It turns out that along the way, an event occurred that made me rethink, reevaluate my investments and recalculate the route. And honestly, I think this is part of the investor's journey. We are always learning, having new experiences, and this experience helps us make better decisions. Are you part of the team that buys and holds forever? Or have you also had to recalculate your route at some point in your investor journey? But let's get to it. This decision to sell Klabin was triggered by the merger of Brazil with Oren. Just so you understand, I had 10,000 shares of Brazil, a very large position in my portfolio. So, because of this transaction, I only had two options. Either I accepted the conversion of my shares into Oren, a company I had not chosen, or I sold my entire position and had free money to seek new opportunities in the market. Well, I sold and this sale made me rethink my portfolio. I don't really like selling shares. For me, it's much easier to decide to buy than to sell. But my reasoning was more or less the following. If I sold a large position like that, why would I keep smaller positions that were no longer contributing as much to my strategy? So it was more or less a case of passing the buck. And that's when I analyzed my position in Klabin, analyzed the dividends it was paying, and came to the conclusion that at that moment the best decision was to sell. And that's what I did. So let's look at the numbers to see if this trade was worth it. You can already see here on the screen that on July 30th, 2024, I sold $4,400 Klabin shares for $4.41 each, totaling $19,404 in this transaction. Since my average purchase price for these shares was $3.86, I still obtained a capital gain of 55 per share, which resulted in a net profit of $2,420. And here's a very important point: since the total value of the sale was less than $20,000, $1,000 in the month, this transaction was exempt from income tax. That is, this profit entered the account clean. 3 days after the sale of Klabin shares, on August 2nd, I had already decided where to reallocate that capital. So, with the $19,400 that came from the sale of Klabin, I bought $740 shares of Banco do Brasil, paying an average of $26.20 per share, which totaled the amount invested of $19,388, $388. If you look at the brokerage notes for that period, you will notice that I acquired a little more Banco do Brasil shares. This happened because I had an additional amount in cash in the account and ended up supplementing the purchase. But here, to make the analysis easier and maintain a fair comparison, we will focus only on the amount that came from the sale of Klabin, because our goal here is to try to understand whether this exchange of assets was worth it or not. Let's now analyze the impact of dividends on this exchange of Klabin for Banco do Brasil. If I had kept the Klabin shares, I would have received a total of 18 cents per share in dividends and interest on equity. Since I had 4,400 shares, this would represent a total of $792 in dividends. This was in this period, from the sale until now. On the other hand, with the proceeds from the sale of Klabin, I acquired 740 shares of Banco do Brasil. In this same period, Banco do Brasil distributed $1.95 per share in dividends, which, multiplying this amount by the 740 shares that I had acquired with the sale of Klabin, I received a total of $443 in dividends. If I had kept Klabin, I would have received only $792. With the exchange for Banco do Brasil, I received $1,443. So far, it seems that this exchange was worth it. Now let's talk about the appreciation of the stock. If I had kept the Klabin shares in my portfolio, each share would be worth $3.59 today. Since my average price was $3.86, this means that today I would be in the red, with a total market value lower than the amount I paid for it. Doing the math here, I would have accumulated $11,188 in depreciation. In other words, in addition to having stopped earning more dividends, I would also be in the red with this stock. With Banco do Brasil shares, the scenario was the opposite. I bought 740 shares for $26.20 each, and today they are being traded for $27.80. This represents an appreciation of $1.60 per share, which totals a gain of $11,184 just in stock appreciation, at least so far. And here it is important to point out that this is just a snapshot of the moment. We are talking about variable income, so prices fluctuate, vary, scenarios change. So today this exchange proved to be more advantageous, but in the future this may be different. Now let's make a quick but very important comparison about how each of these companies treats shareholders when it comes to paying dividends. Let's start with Klabin, which changed its dividend payment policy in October 2024. It maintained a mandatory limit for shareholders, but will use the adjusted EBIT as a basis to provide flexibility in dividend distribution. This way, it will be able to adjust the amounts according to its financial needs and also growth opportunities. Klabin is in a strong investment cycle. It bought forests, made agreements with Timo, is structuring the Kite project, and all of this requires cash. So, it continues to be a good company with a long-term vision, but at this moment the focus is on growth and not so much on distributing profits to shareholders. If you want to know more about this change in the dividend policy and how it affects shareholders, there is a video here on the channel. I'll leave the card here for you. Banco do Brasil also had a change in its dividend policy for this year. Last year, if you remember, the payout was at 45%, but this year the bank defined a range between 40 and 45%. According to the bank's executives, this was a way to protect the bank in the face of a more challenging macroeconomic scenario, in which the market is already projecting a 15% payout by the end of the year, according to Boletim Focus, in addition to the increase in defaults in the agricultural sector, which is one of Banco do Brasil's main portfolios. In other words, this flexibility in the payout ends up being a strategy to balance the distribution of profits with shareholders. And even with this margin for adjustments, Banco do Brasil ends up demonstrating a little more commitment to the investor, since it has already announced that dividend payment schedule for 2025. This provides more predictability and security for those who live or want to live off passive income, while Klabin is directing resources to grow, to expand its business in a more strategic way, temporarily reducing dividends, which can bring benefits to shareholders in the long term. Let's close this video by summarizing why this exchange was worth it. Let's go. The first point is dividends for the period. Banco do Brasil was more positive, while Klabin would only pay me $792 in dividends. Banco do Brasil gave me $443. That is, almost double in less than a year. Not to mention the predictability and frequency of dividend payments, which is also a positive point. The second point is the appreciation since the exchange. Banco do Brasil was also more positive. The bank's shares rose $1.60 per share, while Klabin's shares fell 27 cents each. So, if I had kept Klabin, I would be in the negative by $11,188. With Banco do Brasil, I had an appreciation of $11,184. And the third point is the timing of the sale. This is also a positive point. Even with this recent drop in Klabin, I sold the shares when they were appreciating. I bought it for $3.86 and sold it for $4.41. And that gave me a profit, that is, it was a well-made sale and also at the right time. So, adding it all up, I concluded that the exchange was advantageous in every aspect. I earned more dividends, my new stock appreciated, and I also made a profit on the sale of Klabin. But let's agree that not everything is rosy in the world of investments. I've also made some really bad choices, with disastrous results. The kind that makes you want to pretend it never happened. Do you want me to bring up this case here, which also went really wrong? Then comment here, because I'll only bring up this humiliation if you do. And if you liked this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel and share it so that this video reaches a greater number of people. See you later.